call to order this meeting of the Board of Directors of the Granada Community Services District on Thursday, December 20th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. We have a roll call
Yes, Vice President Barbara Dye.
here.
Director Jim Blanchard.
Here.
Director Matthew Clark.
Here.
Director David Seaton.
Here.
And our new director is Eric Suchamel.
Here. Thank you.
Suchamel, did I pronounce it?
Suchamel. but no
Suchamel,
worries.
sorry.
Right. And then agenda item 1, administration of the oath of office to our newly elected board member. Delia, I understand you're going to
Yes,
administer the oath.
I will do that as the district secretary. So if you'll stand up, Eric, and raise your right hand. You may want to have this in front of you. Okay, just repeat after me. I, and state your name,
Eric Suchamel,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Can we break that up a little bit?
We actually have
Do
the
we have it
version
printed?
in there so you can follow up. Yeah, it's the very first item.
Apologies.
That's okay. That'll make it a lot easier. Okay, let's start over again. That I will support and defend the Constitution
That I will support and defend the Constitution
of the United States
of the United
and the
States
Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California.
and the Constitution of the State of California,
That I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
and that I will well and faithfully defend the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to consideration of electing officers of the board. We are electing a president and vice president, correct?
That is correct.
Um,
The district bylaws state that annually, or it is annually, and on election years, it's the first meeting held after the county election officer certifies the election, that you will elect 2 officers of the board, which will be the president and the vice president. And since our, yeah. So what you'll need to do is open up nominations, and then the directors can nominate who they'd like. We'll do the president first, and then,
I'd like to open nominations for president of the board. I would like to make a motion to nominate Matthew Clark as president. Is there a second? I'll second myself.
Yeah, sure.
Any other nominations? All right, hearing none.
You want to nominate Robert?
No, it's fine. I would not accept.
Oh,
So,
you won't, okay, there you go, I didn't know, okay.
anything further on this motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Congratulations.
Yes. Shall I finish this
Again.
item and then we can swap around?
Sure.
You can take over?
Thank you. Here's this. I wrote down all the times and dates.
Do we have nominations for vice president?
I would like to nominate Barbara Dye for vice president.
All right, moved and seconded. Nominate Barbara Dye for vice president. Any other nominations? Anything further? So all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so shall we,
There you go.
would you like to come take this spot, Matthew?
Aye.
Here, we'll switch. Congratulations.
And likewise. Okay, we will move to the third item on the action agenda, consideration of sewer authority mid-coast side report. I guess that is,
We've had,
With our IT guys tomorrow.
actually had 3 meetings, or 4 on 2 meetings. We had a special SAM meeting on December 1st, and that was held using Martin Rush as our facilitator, and that was basically to develop the strategic plan for SAM going forward for the coming year. And so we had, so basically Martin went around and initially asked all the board members, and David was there, Barbara was there as well. So we had a number of other people there, and as well as Rick Lohman from Montero. And so he asked each person to identify sort of key issues for the board going forward. And one of the key issues, one that everybody agreed on, was identifying the roles and responsibilities of the general manager versus the member managers, because there's been a misunderstanding of just how the roles of communication, who has decision authority and all of that. So we didn't make any decisions on that, but that was identified as a major, one major, everybody agreed on that one. Also, I got another one was to resurrect recycled water, because recycled water projects have been sort of tabled. We've been so busy now, focusing on the suits and so forth, but everybody on the board also agreed that we wanted to resurrect recycled water. Do you want to say something?
Well, and the other thing we talked about is some of the, just back to your point about the member managers, the member agencies, and how we all work together with SAM. One of the areas that was identified as one that could use some work is the budget process. And so that was referred to the finance committee, which I guess I am now going to be serving on, and we talked about the timeline, and it's a very complicated timeline with just lots of back and forth. To have SAM have the autonomy to have its own budget and set its own priorities, and yet accept and incorporate recommendations from the 3 agency managers and the 3 agency boards. And so that's not been resolved, but it's an area that's been identified as one needing work. And so the finance committee is going to continue to work on that. I did a revised timeline and sent it to the other members of the finance committee and have not heard back. But there's a number of issues there, and I know that for us, this has been an issue of having the budget come to this board with the SAM reps expressing frustration with some aspects of that budget. And, so we need to figure out a process whereby the concerns of the member agency boards get the weight they deserve in the process, while SAM still, which is an independent agency, has the overall say on the budget. So it's a balancing act, but we're gonna get there. Just like to comment on one other thing, which I just learned, which was that I was under the impression that all SAM employees got 2-3% raises a year, one for cost of living and one for the step up, the bonus essentially for good work for the year. That was, but it turns out that after 7 years, those that second 3% no longer happens. So only about half of the employees are getting that second bonus, and that's been a repeated issue for us for issues of compensation for SAM employees. So there's just, as the new SAM rep, I'm learning things about how this all works, that there's a lot more to learn, but it's going to be an interesting challenge to try to hopefully improve the relationship between SAM and certainly our board.
Thank you.
I have a question. Is a strategic plan something that is required, or, I know there's a sewer management plan is required by state law. Is a strategic plan also something that is required that SAM have?
I don't know.
Well, I read rather hope not, because we don't have one.
Gotcha.
I think, yeah.
I mean,
Something we can make
essentially just, you know, they've started with the year before's kind of a bullet list of kind of goals and priorities. And so, I mean, my general thoughts on it were, you know, I think even the first kind of part of the day, kind of indicative of a lot of the problems we have cooperating with each other. There's a lot of gridlock and disagreement on anything that's kind of process-driven and structure-driven. Anything, you know, that just, you know, it just felt like just getting nowhere in terms of just everyone having different opinions and just all over the board, and almost a complete waste of time. And then, but then when you do get into the actual projects and talking the details of what needs to be done, everyone's on the same exact page when it comes to recycle water, when it comes to infrastructure improvement, when it comes to what things are kind of the real priorities of it. Everyone's on the exact same page, and I think it's so interesting that when we actually talk about what matters, everyone agrees completely, and there's almost no disagreement between everyone across all boards. But then when it goes to the implementation of that, and more the process-driven, the structure-driven, the reporting, and how all that comes to be, you see this gridlock where you see how nothing can really get done, even though everyone kind of agrees what needs to get done. And I think, you know, that's kind of, from kind of taking a step back, just looking at that, you know, it's like, how do we address those things which, you know, you go back and you can see, and there's, you know, fundamental disagreement on kind of some of those issues, which I think we shouldn't even be talking about. If we were running on all cylinders, all those things would be a byproduct, and a meeting like this would be completely focused around more of the kind of strategic planning nature of it. But you see that there's a lot of those issues that still, you know, are lingering and haven't been addressed. And I think until they address that, it makes it to where a strategic planning meeting like this can't really be focused on what it needs to be, kind of you know, we still got to get back to the root of kind of addressing some of the fundamental issues with the operations of everything.
Thank you. We also had a meeting on December 26th, a regular board meeting. And so we decided, with the one thing concerning Granada, we actually decided to still table, we have the issue of the easement for the wet weather facility expansion. And so that has still been tabled. So that has not moved ahead yet. We're still waiting for getting legal okay from the Granada board.
But I have to say that it's being said that we are holding up the project for that, but I don't think that's really the case. Evidently, they do have the coastal development permit, and it can't be that finalizing the easement documents is what's holding up the wet weather expansion. It doesn't make sense to me. I asked what the status of the coastal development permit is, and they said they haven't. So the last that I understood was that Sam wanted to wait and finalize the legal description of the easement until after the project was done, so that it would reflect the actual footprint of the work that was done in the property, which is one way to do it. The other way is to do a general easement now and amend it later. Either way is fine. So I don't think El Granada is holding this up. I'm not sure what's holding up moving forward with that project, which should be moving forward. Did you get a sense of what's holding that up?
Chuck had advised we continue it.
Right,
Yeah.
but,
That was what I was working.
but does that mean that the figuring out how to handle the easement is the remaining issue on the wet weather expansion? I don't know. So I guess we'll continue this, but I have a concern that we need to figure out exactly what the timeline is to get that project done, because we need to get that project done. It was supposed to be done out to bid months ago, so.
As I recall, last meeting, our general manager said that we can't give them an easement or sign anything over them to them until we have the legal description. And so, and that Sam says that they don't want to do the legal description until the project is
Right.
built. So, we have a catch-22 here.
It just seems like a silly thing to be holding up the project on. Either way will work.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's continue it, but I hope we can get this resolved at our next meeting.
I'm trying to, that may be only, things for now, going forward. That's the end of all the issues.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just also say that I'm going to attend, and as I believe Eric is as well, a walkthrough on the tour of the sewer treatment plant tomorrow.
All right. Well, we're going to move immediately to the consent agenda, which is item 4, approval of November 15, 2018 meeting minutes. Number 5, approval of December 2018 warrants. Number 6, approval of October 2018 financial statements. And number 7, approval of assessment district distribution number 6-18/19. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's consent, no discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes unanimously.
Yeah.
And, so, item number 8, under committee reports, report on seminars, conferences, or committee meetings.
Okay. Public comment.
I know, it's not, and it's not on the,
Or you can take it
Oh, yeah,
before
general-
any-
oh.
Yeah.
you're right, it is on here. I noticed that. All right, I'm gonna back this up
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
and ask if there's anyone who would like to speak as general public participation on any item not on the agenda.
Hello, I'm Patrick Tierney, Chair of the Park Advisory Committee. I know that it's not an agenda item, so I'm not going to speak in detail on it. I'm here as a resource person tonight for what the PAC has been doing. At our last meeting, we had a November 1st and a December meeting. Both of them were quite active. We have a lot going on. The idea that the PAC wants to present a detailed summary of PAC efforts and actions at your January 17th board meeting. So you can look forward to that. We will have something for you then in a written summary as well as a presentation. I have one request. Prior to that, there are a number of citizens who are concerned that live adjacent to the median of Balboa, and their concern is are they liable for actions that take place on the medians? And we would love to have your legal team determine that prior to January 17th, so that we can say something to people concretely that is the county liable right now for actions that take place on the median, Balboa median? If there was a play area created in the future, would the district be liable for that play area? That's my understanding. But what will change, if anything, from a legal perspective? That would be.
Just so you know, I've discussed it with the general manager, and he's going to be running it through legal, so staff will be providing some kind of answer for that. I would imagine that, if there's an accident out there, people can sue whoever they want. For instance, there was a guy who was with his dog crossing the highway, and he sued literally anybody. He sued Caltrans, he sued Granada, anybody who has property around there, and of course it was all pretty much just ignored, but we would be liable for any parts. The district would certainly take liability for park issues.
Well,
And why don't we just actually count this under number 9, report on Parks Advisory
Yes, I
Committee?
was-
Because
Okay.
then we can
I can do
comment.
that.
No, stay there.
Okay.
But, you know,
Yeah.
That's right.
So that's, you know, in terms of the public participation, that's all I really wanted to talk about, unless you have questions for me.
Pat, I would like to chime in. I think that our council, and they're going to reiterate this, has made it clear that after that rigmarole with the county about how people's parcels came to the middle of the median was gotten rid of, it's clear in the agreement that we have with the county for easements that Granada District facilities will be our responsibility and will be liable. But otherwise, like the trees are still belong to the county.
Mhm.
Elaborate a little bit on
Yeah,
where
please
this
do.
came from.
Yeah.
Nancy Marsh, El Granada, and also Parks Advisory Committee. One of the neighbors sent me, directed me to the Director of Public Works brochure on easements. And actually, our meeting use permit references the county has an easement, and they're giving us a permit to build things or to make improvements on their easement. And what it states is that the homeowners own the land underlying the easement to the middle of the street. And so I think it's a little bit of a red herring, but their concern is, they know that they're accountable for the sidewalks, and people, the county have told them that they're liable if somebody trips on the sidewalk and they haven't improved it. So that has raised a concern about, then what's their liability if they own the underlying land underneath the improvements that is currently the road and the medians? Do they have liability like they have liability on the sidewalks? And I think from my reading of the brochure is, since the county accepted the easement, the road and the medians are in the easement that lays on top of their land, that basically the county is responsible for the maintenance of that easement, which obviously they do. They mow and they take out trees now and then, and they're responsible for the roads. So I think it's something that's thrown up, that we would be increasing their liability further with a play area, or if somebody crossed a street and was hit by a car on the way to the play area. And it would just be good if legal could say, there's no change in the county's liability or the homeowner's liability if we put a playground, which we're obviously liable for the playground itself. So it's a bit of because they do own the land underneath the medians, but that doesn't make them liable for the medians, and that's the thing that needs to be clearly stated.
Our attorneys disputed that.
Well, but our permit says the county has an easement, and they're giving us a use permit on their easement.
And
so that's the definition of
That's the approach
easement.
they've taken. However, people who live near the medians can pull out their parcel map and see that their property ends at the sidewalk. That's your parcel.
And the
Yeah.
county accepted those properties, not an easement, accepted those properties. I'm not gonna get into a legal dispute here, but our attorneys disputed the county's,
Okay.
disagreed with, and they kind of came up with the language of the agreement without resolving that underlying question of who owns the land.
who owns.
So that we could move forward, but it
I guess then our
It's
position
tricky.
is, if we move forward, that is gonna be the position of some homeowners,
right.
that we would be potentially increasing their liability. And that will be some of on actually any median improvement we wanted to make, that's an issue that could come up. Because all of the, I think 7 or 8 additional comments that we got in the last couple of weeks are from people who live on Balboa. I could probably name a couple of people who've gone door to door. And they've written in saying, I don't want any improvements to the median because that would increase my liability.
So, all right, well, we'll,
Yeah.
I think Chuck has agreed here for what you're saying, Julia, is in process. Great.
I could also ask, I guess, either of you, the meeting in January in which you're going to give this presentation, that sounds like it could be a large agenda item, lengthy.
Should we do all parks meetings? Is that what you're getting at, maybe?
I'm getting at, yes, I think we're going to, unfortunately, we're going to have to consider 2 meetings a month.
Mhm.
You know.
When we need to, right?
Well, The summary I was thinking of at this point is gonna be about 3 pages, so it's a summary, not a detailed, legal brief. So that's my thinking at this point. Keep it short, but cover the key points, summarize responses. We have hack motions that are pretty clear, so I don't necessarily think we need a separate meeting, a special meeting yet. This is, our thinking is that we would like to have the board opinion on where to go next in terms of how fast do we proceed? Do we proceed? How fast do we proceed? We have, as an example, tentatively scheduled a public outreach event in late January after the board meeting. So that would, as an example, that would be totally dependent on what the results are on the 17th. So we are, it's a new group in some ways, and so we'd like to have direction from the board in regards to the play area. I didn't mention, but we also are moving forward with the summer 2019 activity guide. We've contacted a lot of potential providers, and so it's coming together.
Good.
I'd just like to compliment the Parks Committee. You're doing an amazing job. I know that your last meeting, you talked a lot about some of the concerns raised and mitigation strategies, and, very thoughtful and really appropriate ways to help us move forward. So,
Right.
thanks.
And all this material will be in our agenda packets.
Yes.
Right?
Now, I can
So-
provide the detailed material, for instance, all the meeting minutes, but we can have more detail in the agenda packet. I was thinking a summary would be shorter.
That's
I can
appropriate.
work with PAC
Yeah.
to do something.
Pardon?
I can work with PAC to prepare the report for me.
Okay. Thank you.
Wait, how many positions do we need to fill?
We have one.
Just one? What's the process for that gonna be?
Well, we're gonna be looking to change that process, but generally what we do is we put an ad in the paper and solicit applications for that. There was the idea to possibly go back to prior applications as well, so that's kind of up in the air right now.
Or maybe like elect the alternatives too when we do it, so then when the process
That was
comes,
another option that
we already
came up.
have
Right,
we
right.
have them ready to go.
That is
so
definitely gonna be on the agenda
Yeah.
for changing the guidelines.
In January?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna change it first in January, and then probably February would be when, or in between,
would-
after the January meeting, where somebody, if they were interested.
Right, we
would
would need to have that
that
process.
window and everything else, so looking at February or so,
Yep.
okay.
I'd like to proceed with the existing procedure in January, rather than wait until February, whenever our meeting is in February, but that will probably mean we won't have another board member until the end of the month, so that's 2 more months.
In terms of filling that spot.
Yes.
Yeah, they have a quorum, but I can put an ad in the paper and go forward with our current process if you like.
What do other people think?
I think that makes sense, rather than waiting.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay, I will get it in the review.
All right, thank you. Okay, we have zipped through items 8 and 9. Information calendar, there is not going to be an attorney's report or a general manager's report. Administrative staff report, Delia, do you have anything
I
else?
just want to mention 2 things, actually. We have a new trash can going in at West Point Avenue. I haven't been over there in a while, and I went and checked out the old one, which looks pretty bad. It rusted quite a bit, and the door was broken, and somebody graffitied it. It just didn't look too great, and there's a bucket that they pull out to dump the trash. It gets used quite a bit, and it's very close to the water, so I'm having a new, it came in today, and it's being placed by Recology hopefully tomorrow, and it's really nice, it's very durable. It's also a dual recycling and trash can, so there'll be recycling available, so I'm happy about that. And the other issue has to do with a possible problem with the logs on the lot, the Burnham Strip lot. I was contacted by the county. They stopped or put a hold on issuing the CDX permit for that, and
Did you see the email that came in like 45 minutes ago?
no.
Okay.
Was there
There's an
something that
update.
came in? But it was basically, and the legal
Yeah.
counsels were gonna be discussing it, and
Yeah.
so I don't know where it stands, but we'll have an update on that soon.
Would you like to relate what was in the email
Well,
from 40 months?
yeah, it was just, evidently, there's been back and forth between our legal counsel and the county. And at this point, the issue is whether the logs, are an appropriate, demarcation of the border, and whether they're, when they're not there, if there's an implied right to access from Route 1 across, which we don't really want to be the case. And so it's complicated, and I guess the attorneys are discussing it, and it will come back to us.
Of course, it's complicated. All right.
Can I just say one more thing on that? I also
Yes.
was hoping that, I thought at one point we were gonna try to get some logs to protect the two wetlands. And I know we didn't have enough.
We didn't have
But if
enough.
we get more,
Yeah,
to
well-
me, I would like to see that, to keep people back from the two wetlands, because those are sensitive areas.
Right, well, we'll need to resolve this
Yes.
issue before going forward, and we'll probably have to maybe follow some different process to get some kind of county approval, is what it sounds like, I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you. We don't have an engineer's report, item 13, so item 14, future agenda items. I would like to add to the list discussion of possibility of having some formula to figure out whether we need to have 2 meetings in a given month. Because some of these, as parks start rolling along, there are going to be times when we need to have what will turn into a full meeting on parks. So, does anyone else have,
I like the idea of just kind of doing it on a, as needed basis, kind of maybe even giving the PAC advisory committee, asking them in terms of what dates would be good, rather than necessarily forcing a meeting when we might not really have too much to talk about. But yeah, I think in general, I think we should at least be doing 1 or 2 a quarter, and if we're not really doing that, then I think things are getting left, because I think there's still a lot of these small park projects that just need kind of, continual updating on.
okay, those are workable alternatives.
Yeah. You're thinking of like every other month type thing, or?
I'm not actually thinking of particularly of anything except a policy.
Yeah,
We need a policy. So, would anyone else like to bring up any items
I would like
to
to
add
see
to
us
our list?
put on the agenda, staffing issues.
And I know that our general manager was going to try and put together some park budget numbers as well.
Yeah, park budget would be good.
Okay, we've just changed officers, so I'll just remind the board that the board president participates, does not control, but participates in the putting together the agenda, but anyone can suggest items that they would like to have them on the agenda, but they need to contact the board president, and everybody has my email. So, anything else? I think not. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Before you all leave, can I get your signatures on the checks that I have? And I do need to get that information sheet back as well.